Hi everyone, Sid here, back again, ready for another shaving rant. For today's video, I am going to get back into the conversation hacks, and I don't have many notes, so hopefully this video won't be too rambly, but this is something that I've wanted to do for a while. I wanted to share with you, because I think that when you're conversing with people, it's important to have a good sense of when the other person is bullshitting you. And I wanted to share with you some sentence stems and phrases that personally, when I hear those, it's not necessarily that sentences that begin with these stems are automatically false. However, they are sentences that'll make my little dog ears go, whenever I hear them. And actually, while I'm on the topic, I want to share two caveats that are really important. The first one is you really have to make sure that you listen anyway when you hear these things and let the person finish their thought, because it's easy in conversation. People do this all the time. Personally, it drives me nuts because I'm pretty good at avoiding doing that. But when you stop listening and you're actually waiting for your turn to speak, so when you hear one of these sentence stems that I'm going to share with you, it's really important to keep listening and really make sure that that what you're saying is true, because it's all a matter of context. A bit like reading body language, you really need to make sure that of what the intentions of the person are. And also, this is doubly important to do when you're in a conversation or when you're hearing something that you agree with. I think that, I'm eventually, hopefully soon, but I don't know when, I'm going to do an entire video on confirmation bias. But if you're holding a belief that is false, and you stay in your echo chamber of just watching or speaking to or listening to people who agree with you, then it's pretty easy to have your mind become dull over time. So me personally, I make doubly sure to pay attention and to detect bullshit when I'm listening to a person or having a conversation with a person that I agree with. And there's another caveat that I want to add to this video that I didn't think of, is that it really, this predicates the whole thing. It really depends on what your goal is in the conversation. I mean, there's a difference between a pleasant conversation at a cocktail party and a debate. And I don't want you falling into the trap of, just using your knowledge as a weapon, basically, in a context where it would probably be more productive just to have a pleasant conversation. I've alluded to this a bit in my video on when to and not to let logical fallacies slide, but I think it's important to bear that in mind. So the first sentence stem, or the first little phrase that'll make my dog ears point up, is when I hear "it's been proven that ... and sadly, this is a continuum, but the sad status quo or majority position of most people most of the time is that usually people don't know what they're talking about, and when you say it's been proven, too often, sadly, it's done in a context of someone who read something that confirms what they believed anyway, and the person saying it either has a fancy title or could allude to someone who did, and then you just take that and you go with it and you say it's been proven that it's been proven that gluten is bad for you, or it's been proven that Democrats have a higher IQ than Republicans. I don't know. And I think I just nicked my nose again. We'll see. So it's really important to let's say that your priority, your focus on finding truth in this conversation is somewhat important. I would suggest you challenge when you say it's been proven, and sometimes when a person is, like I just described, is just quoting a newspaper article or blog article that they read that they agree with anyway, and they say it's been proven that creationists are stupid or whatever. Something just as simple as saying really, if the person has notable amount of intellectual honesty, just saying really will usually be enough to make this person say, well, I read it in such and such article, and then you can proceed from that, because we don't always have, I mean, life is short. We don't always have time to do our own research, and we don't always have access to primary sources. So, you know, if the person read it in an article from a source that you find trustworthy, all the better. If not, then you know what you're dealing with. The second one, it's not really a sentence stem, but I just wanted to point out it's really important to pay attention to the use of adverbs. Often enough, people will use adverbs to hedge and to create little spaces of plausible deniability within which they can go hide when it suits them. And, you know, it's like, let's say okay, let's take global warming. So let's say a person says it's been proven that Hummers don't cause any damage to the environment, and then you say really, and the person will say, well, I'm not perfectly aware of every little minute detail, or I'm kind of getting lost jumping over all these examples, but basically, when someone hedges in saying, I'm not perfectly informed, I'm not completely informed, or are you saying that, you know, sometimes it'll be present in the challenge. They'll say, are you saying that driving a Hummer will leave the atmosphere completely unchanged or perfectly unchanged, or that kind of thing? You know, as a general rule of thumb, I find it's typically a good idea to, whenever you hear a word that ends with ly, L-Y, or any other adverb, to just, you know, turn your bullshit radar up just to make sure that the person isn't hedging. I'm surprised that I might not have time to go through all four of these in as much detail as I'd like, so I'll pick one. You know what, fuck it, I'll do both. So, another one that I find, it's important, you really need to be careful with this one, but basically when someone says, it sounds like you're saying ... in a lot of contexts they're preparing to strawman you. So when you say something and someone says, it sounds like you're saying this and that, well, most of the time it's going to be one or two things. So the two most common occurrences is either they're preparing to strawman you, or, and I do this, but I don't use that sentence, but it is something that I do, when you want to make sure that you've assimilated new information. Personally, I am a huge fan of restating what the person said in my own words. So, usually, let's say someone tells me that 2 + 2 makes 4. I'm not usually gonna say, it sounds like you're saying if I have 2 apples and I add 2 more apples, I'm gonna have 4 apples total. I'm usually gonna preface what I'm saying with, listen, I'm just gonna repeat this in my own words to make sure I understand you correctly. That's typically what it sounds like, but, you know, every now and then you might run into someone who is rephrasing in their own words to make sure that they understand correctly, and they might start their sentence with, it sounds like blah, blah, blah. So be wary of that in both ways. I mean, again, as I said in the beginning, it's important to listen to what the person says instead of, as soon as you hear it sounds like, in your mind you're getting ready with the, aha, that's a straw man, and you're not really listening to what the person is saying. And the last one, which is my personal favorite because I've rarely heard this stem used in a context where it's completely true. Ooh, I just hedged with an adverb there. And that wasn't planned. But the sentence is, well, I was just sitting there minding my own business when all of a sudden, that, if you're a betting person and you're in a hurry, the safe money is on bullshit right away. I think this is obvious enough that I don't need to go into a long explanation as to why, but you know, just an example, I was listening to a comedy podcast several months ago, actually, this incident. And one of the guests, by comedy podcast, I mean a podcast where the host is speaking to comedians. And in this context, he was speaking to the owner of a comedy club. And he was mentioning how often when you end up kicking someone out of your club, their version of the story will always be, well, I was just sitting there with my friends having fun when all of a sudden we got kicked out of the club. And when you dig a little deeper, you're gonna... They won't mention off the bat that they were heckling and answering their cell phone, and the MC or host had warned them several times not to do any of that stuff, and they just kept doing it. From the perspective of the person who gets kicked out, it's what? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, when you dig a little, you can see that it was how can I say this? Somewhat reasonable in context to kick the person out of the comedy club. Hopefully, this example is generic enough that you can apply this in all contexts. But as a general rule of thumb, when you hear a sentence that begins with, well, I was just sitting there minding my own business, when all of a sudden you can just dismiss it as bullshit. But again, and I will repeat these caveats as I prepare to let you go, that it is important to listen to what the person is saying because, you know, it's a continuum. Some things are true, some things are false, and in the human realm of conversation and opinions and recounting things that happen, there are sometimes fuzzy areas in between. So yeah, it's important to keep listening, and also it is doubly important to have your bullshit sense ready. If you care about pursuing truth and having true positions on things, it's doubly important to have your bullshit radar on full alert when you're talking to someone who agrees with you and says stuff that you agree with, sometimes even very deeply. So on that note, thank you very much for watching. Please share your comments under here. Please like and share. That would help me out a lot. You can subscribe on YouTube, and you will find links to my Twitter and Tumblr and all that awesome stuff under this video. So thank you very much. I will see you soon, and that's it. You take care. Later.